The Secret Story of Him. Chapter 10. The Devil's Shadow. It was all over the newspapers how Michael and Elias were described as the group leaders of the rebellion, while Potwell was mentioned, but no one seemed to know him even existed. Him was only 16, but the weight of 205 lives, 75 children, and 130 adults, most too weak to fight, pressed on his shoulders. The swamp itself was trying to break us. We were hunted by men whose cruelty knew no bounds, and by a system so vile it feared its own collapse. The fall of the Jones Plantation had sent shockwaves through the South. Stories of rebellion spread like wildfire, whispered in the kitchens of the enslaved, muttered in hushed tones in the overseer's quarters, and debated with unease in the parlors of the plantation elite. The rebellion at Jones wasn't just a bloodbath, it was an omen. The plantation, once a jewel of the Mississippi Delta, had become a charred ruin, its overseers slaughtered, its fields burned, and its chains broken. The idea that those enslaved could rise up, could fight back, was more dangerous than any weapon. It was a contagion that spread fear into every corner of the South, from the swamps of Louisiana to the mansions of Virginia. Slave patrols, the overseer's grim militia, had doubled their efforts. These patrols were born from fear, a fear older than America itself. Formed in the early 1700s in the Carolinas, the patrols were tasked with maintaining control over enslaved populations. They were ruthless men hardened by greed and hate, who roamed the countryside armed with muskets, whips, and bloodhounds. Their purpose wasn't just to capture runaways. It was to enforce terror, to remind the enslaved that even dreaming of freedom came at a price, and now that fear was amplified tenfold. The fall of the Jones Plantation had humiliated them. Dozens of masters, mistresses, overseers, and patrolmen had been killed at the Jones Plantation Grand Gala, poisoned, then dragged into the fields, and executed by the very people they thought they owned. The Jones Rebellion had become legends, cautionary tales told in every plantation house. If they can fall, so can we. Kim understood this fear. He saw it in the way the patrols moved in their frantic, disorganized searches through the swamp. They weren't hunting, they were lashing out, desperate to reassert control. As Potwell lay burning with fever, her breath shallow and labored, the group of survivors clung to her strength even as it faded. Him looked at them, at the faces etched with exhaustion and terror, and made his choice. "I'll lead them away," he said. His voice, though young, carried a weight that silenced the murmurs of the group. Ida stepped forward, with a face of pure beauty, and her perfectly set dark tone yelled, "You can't, they'll kill you." He turned to her, his eyes burning with a resolve that was far older than his years. "If I don't, Ida, they'll kill us all." Her head lowered, in silence. He gathered what few weapons they had, a rusted axe, the spear Michael had taught him to craft, and a bundle of rocks wrapped in cloth. He slung a satchel over his shoulder, filled with scraps of dried meat and swamp herbs. "Keep moving," he told Black Adam. "Take them south. Stay in the water as much as you can. It will hide your tracks." Ida's head still bowed, tears carving paths down her cheeks. "Come back," she said, her voice barely a whisper. Kim stood silent, offering no reply. The patrols were close, their hounds barking and torches flickering in the distance. Kim moved like a shadow through the swamp, his bare feet silent against the muck. He smeared mud over his skin, masking his scent, and blending into the darkness. As he crept closer, the murmur of their voices slithered through the darkness, low, coarse, and laced with venom. Each word was a jagged edge dripping with hatred, as if they were sharpening their words to cut through the very air. The rancor in their tone made the hairs on his neck stand on end, urging him to move with even more caution. "These damn runaways think they can just disappear," one spat. "We'll hang every last one of them." Another laughed, a cruel, hollow sound. Jones Plantation fell because they let their niggers get too comfortable. Should have whipped the fight out of them when they had the chance. Him's grip tightened on his spear. These men didn't just enforce cruelty, they reveled in it. Him's lips curled into a dark, jagged grin. "They'll get their fight," he muttered, a spark of raw defiance blazing in his eyes, a storm of fury clawing to be unleashed. The first patrolman didn't even have time to blink. Him stepped from the trees in absolute silence, driving the spear through the soft flesh beneath the man's jaw and into his brain. No cry out, just the wet, choking gargle as blood poured down his chest. Him held the body upright a moment longer, easing it quietly into the muck, one hand over the mouth as the life drained out. By the time the others noticed the silence, it was too late. Their torches flared in confusion, like chasing shadows, nerves unraveling. The swamp didn't give him away. It welcomed him, it cloaked him. He slipped between cypress roots and hanging moss like something born of the dark. Each strike deliberate, each kill precise, a blade to the kidney, a spear launched from the trees. A whisper of movement, and then silence again. "Over here," Him shouted, his voice echoing through the swamp. He knew the swamp better than they ever could imagine. He led them deeper into its heart, where the ground was treacherous, the water teeming with alligators, and the air thick with malice. One by one, the patrolmen fell, some to his blade, others to the swamp itself. A scream rang out as a man sank into quicksand, his desperate cries silenced by the consuming muck. Another fell to the jaws of an alligator, his torch disappearing beneath the black water. The swamp was his ally. He learned its twists and turns, its hidden paths and deadly traps. They stumbled through the muck, their torches casting eerie shadows against the gnarled trees. Him struck with brutal precision, a shadow in the dark, his movements feral and relentless. An axe slammed into the back of a patrolman's skull, the sickening crack, sending echoes through the entire swamp. Before the man could fall, Him's spear was already flying, a blur of sharp steel tearing through the night, finding its target not from skill but sheer determination. Each attack sowed chaos. Screams of pain and terror echoed through the swamp, their shouts growing more desperate, frantic, like animals cornered by a predator they couldn't see, couldn't escape. Blood spilled, staining the ground with their fear. The air thickened with the stench of sweat and death. "He's just a nigger," one of them screamed, panic lacing his voice. "Where the hell is Tom and Matthew?" Tom, Matthew," they yelled. The swamp itself seemed to rise against the patrols. Alligators slid silently through the water, drawn by the scent of blood. Mosquitoes swarmed, their bites driving the men mad. The trees loomed like sentinels, their branches clawing at the patrols as if the swamp wanted to swallow them whole. By the time the sun began to rise, the patrols were broken. Their numbers had dwindled, their torches extinguished, their hounds either dead or fled. Hin stood on a fallen log, his chest heaving, his body streaked with mud and blood. He looked back toward the direction of the group, now miles away. They would live because of him, because he had refused to let them die. But his fight was far from over, and as long as they hunted us, Hin would haunt them, relentless, unyielding, merciless, considered to be eye for an eye. Because on this blood-soaked land they call America, their God ain't ever loved the righteous. He loves the greedy, the cruel, the evil. The swamp had swallowed him whole, shaped him into a phantom. Night after night, he danced between the patrols, drawing their rage and bullets away from the group. The swamp became his weapon, its treacherous waters, its snarling beasts. The patrolmen fell one by one, their screams muffled by the murky depths or silenced by the jagged claws of a waiting panther. Him's face remained a ghost in their nightmares, slipping between the trees, blending with the shadows. The hounds, their most loyal tools, became sacrifices, their howls silenced by alligator jaws snapping shut like thunder. The swamp was alive. He slept where death would not dare linger. The tangled limbs of ancient trees offered shelter above the snapping jaws of gators, while the dens of panthers, long abandoned, became his sanctuary. His body bore the swamp's marks, scratches, bites, and the lingering ache of cold nights. But his spirit burned fiercer than ever. Weeks passed, and his absence gnawed at the group like a fresh wound. Yet him trailed them always, an unseen guardian, weaving between the chaos of patrols and the fragile hope of the group's survival. When Yin finally reappeared, stepping out of the swamp, as if conjured by it, Ida was the first to run to him. She was aflame in the darkness, her beauty raw and untamed, her relief palpable. Her dark, almond-shaped eyes shimmered with tears as she wrapped her arms around him. "I thought the swamp had swallowed you," she whispered in Creole, her voice like a prayer, a blend of sorrow and reverence for his strength, his refusal to surrender. The scars on her face had begun to fade, thanks to Mesa, a 33-year-old midwife by trade, trained in the blood of the fallen Jones Plantation. Mesa had stumbled upon the plant while foraging, a waxy-leafed miracle that seeped a sticky white sap capable of drawing out infection. They called it feverbane, its name whispered like a prayer among the survivors. Even Patwa, the 28-year-old warrior with the eyes of someone who had stared death in the face, now moved with renewed strength. Her fever had broken, her wounds no longer weeping, though her steps were cautious. She bore the weight of leadership quietly, her machete a permanent fixture at her side. With trembling fingers, Ida and younger sister Doll pressed feverbane sap into her wounds, their hands steadying only under the calm, unwavering guidance of Mesa. Now, Patwa's gaze was sharper, her resolve like stone, her presence a pillar for those who leaned on her without words. As they moved southward, the group clung to the edges of the wetlands, their survival entwined with the swamp. The air always heavy, filled with the smell of brine as the wetlands bled into the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America, whatever we call it these days. Baton Rouge was now a memory of the past. The death patrols there were too massive to risk one more moment of rest. We had to keep moving as fast as possible. The swamp had its own kind of danger, but at least it didn't wear boots, carry muskets, crack whips, or crawl into our beds at night. Yin looked over the group, Ida, her smile soft and stubborn, like light refusing to leave. Patwa and Mesa, quietly tending the fire, their hands moving with care as they prepared a meal for the group, as if feeding them could hold the world together a little longer. Yin stood firm, machete in hand, face set like stone. He wasn't flinching, wasn't running. "This ain't just about staying alive," Yin said, voice rough, truth scraping out his throat. "It's about making damn sure they remember we was here. This for freedom." The swamp whispered its agreement, the rustling leaves and rippling waters echoing the unspoken promise.
You've been listening to The Secret Story of Him, From Enslaved to the Grave and the Man Who Freed More Slaves Than Harriet Tubman. Chapter 10. The Devil's Shadow. Thank you for walking with us through this haunting chapter, where one boy became a phantom of vengeance and the swamp itself became a weapon of black survival. If this story stirred your spirit, honor it. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Every voice adds to the uprising. Chapter 11 is next. Tap the link and keep running with us. Support the mission. Cash App. MyUTime. This ain't just a story. It's a haunting. It's history reborn. It's retribution.